everybody, I'm Chef AJ and welcome to Healthy Living. My guest today is Heather Van Vorous. She is the founder of Heather's Tummy Care. So welcome, Heather. It's been a long time chasing you down, trying to get you to, that's okay. No, that's good that you're busy. But I was saying I've interviewed so many doctors and best-selling authors, and it hasn't been as difficult as trying to connect with you. And it's okay. Don't feel bad. I'm just excited that I finally get to talk to you because I've been promoting your product for years on various forums and all my Facebook Lives because it's helped me so much. And I get so many questions that I wanted you, the founder, the creator, to talk about what it is and your story because I can't answer these questions. But first, let me tell you how I found you. So I'm going to show you a picture. You've probably seen it a million times.
Oh, yes.
So that was me when I was 9 months pregnant. I wasn't pregnant, but everybody thought I was. And now because I'm slender, it really looked like I was pregnant. So on November 20th, 2014, this happened. This bloating happened. And it stayed with me for 8.5 months. Now, it's bad enough that it was visually unappealing and very uncomfortable, but it also, I had diarrhea the entire time. So I was diagnosed with IBS, SIBO. I went to 14 doctors, including 3 gastroenterologists, 2 who were the leading experts in the various medical centers. I went on thousands of dollars worth of medications and antibiotics and experimental drugs, and nothing helped. Until a friend in Baltimore named Wendy, who I think she's corresponding with you, told me about your product. And I figured it was $14 on Amazon. I'd already spent thousands of dollars out of pocket seeing these doctors, naturopaths, psychiatrists, because I started thinking, well, this must be in my head. I'm not getting better. I went on an elimination diet for 8.5 months, eating nothing but sweet potatoes and zucchini. And I didn't know what the heck was wrong with me. I mean, I knew what they told me. I had pretty much every test, CAT scan, lower GI, upper GI. The only thing I didn't have was I didn't submit to the endoscopy and the colonoscopy. I wasn't going to do that again. And then she said, try this product, which is called Heather's Tummy Fiber, which was about $14 on Amazon. And actually that lasted about 6 months because I was very lucky that my dose was a low dose and it was, for me, a once a day dose. And also, they also sold it at our health food store, Follow Your Heart. It had one ingredient, acacia. I didn't know what it was, but I looked it up and it was vegan and it was a root. And I figured, what the heck? And it worked. And so thank you so much for inventing this. And I know there's going to be a great story behind it. And again, I'm not saying that this might not help everyone, but hey, it's worth a shot, guys, if you're suffering. And the great thing is I don't have bloating anymore. I would say, it's probably too much information. I mean, I wish my poop was firmer than it is, but compared to what it was, having diarrhea for 8.5 months, I'm pretty lucky. I wake up every morning, I take it. My dose seems to be a half a tablespoon, and it's working great. And I know it works because when I forgot it when I was on vacation, immediately the diarrhea came back. And so it's wonderful. It's vegan. There doesn't seem to be anything that's in it that would affect somebody negatively. It'll either work or it won't work. I have turned on many of my colleagues to this. Every doctor that I go to, I bring the can in. Some of them have heard of you, Dr. Mark Pimentel, some of the gastroenterologists. A lot of times the doctor will take a picture of it, and some of them are actually recommending it to their patients. So now, without further ado, who is Heather? How did Heather's Tummy Fiber come along? What is it? And I thank you very much, by the way, for inventing something that is affordable. And then one of the doctors said, well, if it works, you're going to have to take it the rest of your life. And I said, well, I'm okay taking something that's about $30 a year that has no side effects for the rest of my life. Oh, and by the way, what I love about your product, and one of the questions I get is like, how is it different than Metamucil and stuff? Well, Metamucil is disgusting. It tastes disgusting. This powder has no taste, it has no smell, it has no viscosity, so it dissolves. It's wonderful. So I'm going to shut up now and let you talk because we're both Aries. So oops, I just dropped the can. So I'm going to let you talk. Tell us your story and how you cured your own IBS and discovered this product, and anything else you want to say.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm thrilled. You made my day.
Thank you.
There's nothing better than hearing from people that they are doing better. That it's the happiest part of this whole entire adventure, endeavor, company, craziness, all of it. I love to hear from people that they got their lives back. It's fantastic. kind of overwhelming.
Oh, thank you. I can't believe, like, I don't know if you want to say your age, but when you we were just meeting today, and I thought, why is there like a 20-year-old like that? I mean, you're like, you look amazing, by the way, and it's like you're not 20. Yeah, you look really good.
Well, I've had IBS since I was 9.
Wow.
So we've come really close to 40 years, which I can't believe. That's a very long time to have dealt with this. And yeah, I had no help. Unfortunately, I didn't get good doctors. I didn't get a diagnosis. I didn't really get anything except just dismissed by a pediatrician at that age and told that I should stop whining and I should stop complaining because it's just pain. That was after I blacked out from pain, so it was pretty severe, but I guess she didn't care. She didn't refer me for any tests, just basically said it's all in your head and stop complaining.
Don't you hate that? Oh my God. Doctors that do that, and the thing is even if it is all in your head, which IBS isn't, they should still help you,
Exactly. And how do you tell a child stop complaining about pain that you just blacked out from? I thought I was going to die.
Oh boy, I hope that person is either dead or out of business now.
Well, I will tell you, when I wrote, the very first thing that I sort of did with IBS is I wrote a book called Eating for IBS about the dietary guidelines that were known, that were available, what had helped me, and it was a cookbook. And she was actually still in practice at the time I wrote this. And I took her a signed copy, and it said, "Dear Doctor," I remember her name, "and when you finish reading this, you know where you can stick it."
Oh my God.
And I went out to the parking lot after I dropped off that book, and I did a little victory dance with my husband because it was, finally a little bit of like justice after all those years. And it may have been a really petty and childish thing to do, but it felt great.
I would have done the same. The thing is I probably would have done the same thing.
That's not how you treat people, especially if you're a doctor.
Yeah.
You don't harm people when you're a doctor.
And especially when you're dealing with a child.
Right? It's the worst. It's the worst thing ever. And literally, I never went back to her. I didn't go to doctors until I had to see someone, I think, to get into high school and get immunization so that I could get accepted. I just avoided them for years after that. I learned my lesson. She taught me. I don't complain. I don't say anything.
Wow.
And I guess I'm lucky that it wasn't a bowel obstruction and I didn't die, or that it wasn't Crohn's or colitis and I didn't die.
It's amazing because, you brought up a memory for me that doesn't have anything to do with IBS, but we look at doctors as these all-powerful beings, and a lot of doctors are absolutely wonderful. Don't get me wrong. I am not here to bash doctors. Both of my brothers are doctors. My grandfather was a beloved doctor who treated people for free, and when they didn't have money for medication, he would go do the house call for free, give them food, give them money. I love doctors, but not all doctors know everything. And when I think about it, I was thinking about something when I was 6 years old. I remember doctors were still making house calls. This was 1960. And my grandfather was my doctor, but he was on vacation. And so my cousin's doctor came, and my cousin was very petite and I was obese as a child. And I remember he threw the covers off me and he goes, "Oh my God, this girl is huge. Her leg is the size of Betsy." And I remember here I am with 105 fever, 6 years old, and now I'm in tears because I've got this man I've never met, Dr. Charles Goldenberg, telling me how fat I was. And that stuff affects you, when anybody's mean to you, because kids, but you made me realize that, and we give all this power to our doctor when we're going to find out that in certain cases, the power to heal is really within us. And it can be as simple as, this. I mean, the amount of money that I spent on these medications that my insurance did not approve is, I could basically have a car now if I had only heard about you sooner. So sorry to segue, but it gets me so mad to hear your story, or I hear other stories of people being mistreated by doctors. And again, even if it is in your head, then find a way to help this child who has this problem that's in her head. You don't do that. So, I wish there was a way. I mean, and not all doctors are like this. We know that. There's some very loving, caring doctors, but I hear a lot of these stories of people, especially women, being dismissed.
I do too. I had a call this morning from someone who's in that exact position. And it's infuriating. And I feel the same way you do. There are fabulous doctors out there, and I have a couple doctors myself who I love, and I will never let them retire. I hope you don't chase them down. But not all of them are great. And at the very least, I think it's fair to expect them to be kind and to listen to you. And if they don't know what's wrong with you, to say those words, "I don't know." Mm-hmm. That's very different than saying there's nothing wrong with you. No, that's not the same. You don't know what's wrong with me. That doesn't mean there is nothing wrong with me. It means you don't know. So try to help me find another avenue of help.
Yeah.
Go to another doctor. Point me in a different direction. Don't just act as if I'm crazy or you don't know what's wrong with me. You don't want to send me for tests. Therefore, I'm the problem. I'm not the problem. I have a problem. I need help.
Well, you know what? When you were 9 years old, there wasn't health grades in Yelp. Because now, when a doctor treats you like that,
right? You can report it, or you have the power to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And this was an HMO, which was even worse. She was the only pediatrician.
Wow.
So that was it. It was her or nothing. So, okay.
That's just sad. So 9 years old, you really got IBS young. I didn't even read, what is IBS? I mean, I know neither of us are doctors, but I know it stands for Irritable Bowel Syndrome. And I mean, how would you describe it as a layperson to other people?
It's considered a brain gut disorder. So it's not a disease, it's a dysfunction. And it literally means that the nervous system, the enteric nervous system of your gut, which operates independently from your spinal cord and your brain, doesn't work right. There's no disease. There is no underlying pathology they've been able to identify. But for some reason, the nervous system of your gut doesn't function properly, and it doesn't communicate with your brain properly either. And that leads to the symptoms. And the symptoms are defined by the Rome criteria. You have to fit the Rome criteria, or you should not be diagnosed with IBS. And in a nutshell, it's lower abdominal pain or discomfort in association with bowel dysfunction. That can be diarrhea, that can be constipation, it can be alternating.
Right.
And gas are often associated with, sometimes nausea is associated with it. But you have to really fit the Rome criteria in order to be diagnosed with IBS. And they need to rule out a lot of other disorders that can cause the same symptoms, but could be much more serious in terms of progressing into other complications or leading to cancers, things like Crohn's or ulcerative colitis, inflammatory bowel diseases, celiac. As people get older, they need to screen out colon cancer, diverticulosis, even endometriosis and ovarian cancer can cause the same symptoms.
Yeah.
There's a range of things that you really need to see a doctor for to have these other things eliminated.
Right. It's almost like a diagnosis of exclusion. It's like we check that you don't have any of these things, and so this is sort of what it is.
That's right. They can't test you for something that says yes, you have IBS. They can only test you for things that you hopefully don't have. And then if your symptoms fit the wrong criteria and they've excluded everything else, now you're left with the diagnosis of IBS.
Right. Well, the brain-gut connection is, I just interviewed Dr. Emran Mayer, who wrote a book on that, and that is becoming just something that is being really taken seriously now and studied, and so...
It's huge. It's a huge portion of it. It's why things that sound sort of crazy but aren't, like gut-directed hypnotherapy, literally changes the way your gut functions if you have IBS. It's one of the few things that gets right in there to the brain-gut disorder and affects it. Yeah. That's why stress is a huge trigger.
Right. Oh, absolutely. So 9 years old, got IBS, being dismissed by doctors, lots of pain, blacking out, and then now successful entrepreneur, inventor of a product that's helping lots and lots of people. So what happened between 9 and now?
A lot. It was a slow process. It took a good 10 years for me to figure out what I could and couldn't eat. And that was my big trigger. Stress I knew bothered me, but on a day in, day out basis, it was what I was eating or I wasn't eating. And it took a very long time to make rhyme or reason out of that, to figure, here's what I can eat, here's what I can't eat. And I kind of had it down by the time I was maybe 19. And it was just for me. I still didn't have a diagnosis. I knew there was something wrong with me. I completely thought my pediatrician was crazy and terrible person and wrong. There was something wrong with me, but she didn't know what it was. I figured at that point, it's not going to kill me. It's been 10 years, whatever it is, it's coming and going. I just have to live with it. And so I did. I just lived with it. I ate what I needed to eat, avoided what I couldn't eat. And it was really another 10 years after that the internet came along. And I stumbled into some sites that were for irritable bowel syndrome and thought, this sounds like me. And there's other people out there with it. I could not believe it. It just was like a light went on in a whole new universe. And my God, there's other people who have the same thing. And now I think I actually have an answer for what's going wrong with me all these years. So I started sharing dietary information and other sort of tips and tricks that had helped me, and telling people, I don't know if it will help you, but here you go. Here's an email. Here's a great big long text file, and see if it helps you too. And just started getting a wealth of feedback from people. And I was really horrified to learn that things had not become mainstream by then. This was 20 years on. Why wasn't this information out there for all of these people? Why weren't there books on the market? Why were they still being given really terrible advice and misinformation and still being dismissed. This is all in your head. There's nothing wrong with you. And that really led to me writing Eating for IBS, the first book, trying to collate all the information I had and all the research I could gather and put it into a form for patients, from a patient, not from a doctor's perspective, but of having to live with this day in, day out. How do you do that? Well, here's how I did it. I hope it helps you.
That's so wonderful. I love this. I love your story. And I love that even before you had a diagnosis or figured it out for yourself, you let your body's wisdom guide you. And one of the things is IBS is such a variable disease that, like, it's not like two cases are alike. Like you say, because you can have diarrhea one day and constipation the other day and have them both on the same day. It's not like two cases are identical. And the thing is, that's why the diet, it's not going to be, yours and mine might be different. We all have to find out what works for us. And I run a program on food addiction, and it's the same thing. I don't think that it's a one size fits all. There's maybe a one size fits most, like certain foods I think people should avoid, like sugars and things like that. But, I found for myself that even though, when you look back, when I look back on this time in my life, it was horrible, but it allowed me to do the elimination diets of all elimination diets and find out what foods worked for me and what foods didn't. And what was so cool about having eaten nothing but two foods and by the way, I could eat sweet potatoes and zucchini without bloating or having, like, those foods I knew were, like, safe for me, is that when I added foods in, I was able, I kept a very, very accurate food journal. I actually went to two of the 14 doctors I went to were immunologists. And so they were saying food allergies, but the thing is, and a naturopath, but none of their tests even agreed, right? So what I had to do was, one of the things they said that was helpful, and I think this is true for IBS or people that are overweight or looking to conquer food addictions, is the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So it doesn't matter if Dr. So-and-so, and I hate this because I'm a vegan for 40 years. In the plant-based world, they say, you have to eat these 12 foods a day. Well, no, you don't. Not if they don't agree with you on some level, whether it's a food trigger or an allergy, and they make you feel like you're a failed vegan if you don't eat beans and nuts and all these things every day. And what I noticed was that it really helped me to have that long period of not having any foods, and then it was getting very accurate, and I could see that within minutes which foods would bloat me. And I always knew I was allergic to soy, and one of the ways my soy allergy was diagnosed years ago was with this bloating thing, because I avoided things like like processed soy, but one day I started eating edamame thinking that was healthy, and like my stomach would go like this. And so I found for me that the legume family was just something I couldn't do. I couldn't eat beans, I couldn't eat lentils, and I couldn't eat the things that were legumes that were not beans and lentils, like peas and sugar snap peas and green beans. And I would have immediate bloating and diarrhea. And I went a whole year without them. And the doctors corroborated that I shouldn't eat any food that was going to trigger the disease. And the GI doctors explained why legumes were so hard on my particular system. It had to do with the speed of fermentation and because I had SIBO. So I waited a whole year and I tested again, and like within seconds. And so it's not like I didn't try, because people make you, well, not all people, but vegan people make you feel like, well, you need to eat beans. You're going to die without legumes. Well, first of all, you won't die without any food group. But I encourage people to do what you did at 19, is find out what foods work for you and not eat foods that don't work for you just because somebody who's wearing a white coat says you need to have these foods. I love that you're a rebel.
You have to be a little bit with this disorder, and I agree with you across the board. Food allergies, food intolerances, the FODMAPs, IBS. If your gut literally tells you you can't eat something, or you can, this makes you feel better, it doesn't matter what anybody else says.
Right.
It really doesn't. And I hear this from people too. Sometimes there's healthy foods they can't have, or they have to be careful with because there can be too much insoluble fiber in it, or the FODMAPs. And I love to use strawberries as an analogy for this because, how do I not eat this? This isn't good for me. I should avoid this. Okay, well, strawberries are a really healthy food, right? They're high in fiber. They're high in vitamin C. Everybody should eat strawberries. Unless you're allergic to strawberries and it makes your throat swell shut and you die, then strawberries are not really healthy for you,
right.
Are they? It's the same thing with IBS. And yeah, you might not die, but if something makes you feel like you want to die, that's not a healthy food for you. You're going to have to find a way around that. Find a replacement. Find a tolerance level of it. And, people who won't listen to you, won't agree with that, don't even argue with with them.
Right.
It doesn't matter. It's not their body. It's not their life. They're not living with this disorder.
Right.
Hey, thanks for your feedback. I appreciate it. I'm not eating the strawberry anyways.
Right. You know, it's interesting because even people that aren't doctors will say that this is in our heads. I don't know if you get that, but like, you know, people say, what do you mean you can't eat beans? Everybody can eat beans. And then I found the greatest validation is I was guest chefing at a medical facility called True North. And so I was being served this food made by somebody else, and you know, and the doctor assured me that it didn't have any soy in it, and that the white cream that was on it was cashew cream. And so I ate it, and within 5 minutes, everyone like around me, 40 people, just saw me go like this. And then of course I had diarrhea, but it was such great validation. Was like, if this was in my head, then how could this happen? Because you told me it was cashews. It turned out it was cannellini beans. So I just really encourage people, because women especially, they're people pleasers, and they don't want to make, you know, oh, well, they made it just for you, and they don't want to turn down food, and they don't want to make people uncomfortable. Well, then have diarrhea if you want, because it's
you have to put yourself first with this disorder. And
Absolutely.
trust yourself and be insistent. You really do. You know, it's harder for children. It's harder for teens when they don't have the power. It's easier as an adult. And sometimes you can't be a people pleaser in this situation. You may not be able to go with your friends to a certain restaurant. They may literally have nothing that you can eat. So pick a different restaurant, or eat before you go. That's and right. Go just for the social activity.
Right.
Sorry, I'm full. You know, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Oh, you really have to prioritize your health, and don't be afraid to speak up. That's the other thing. People are afraid that they're going to feel awkward or maybe be difficult. But I really think a lot of the times, if you tell your friends, you tell your family, you tell your coworkers, I have some food intolerances. I can't eat there. I can't eat this. Can we work around this? I've just been super lucky, but I have had really good responses and a lot of generosity, you know, coming my way as a result of that. And people usually cater to it and are happy to help you. Just, you know, give them the chance to let them know that you need a little extra consideration here when it comes to foods, and see if that doesn't work out. A lot of times it does.
Right. Right. So how did you discover what I think is the cure for a lot of people, or at least the thing that's going to manage it? I'm not sure if it is cured, but at least something that will beautifully manage it.
Yep. The tummy fiber, that was one of the first things that we introduced. We founded a company called Heather's Tummy Care. And it came in response to the books. I had been talking about things in the books that were known to help IBS that people could get access to. And a straight soluble fiber supplement was a huge one. Peppermint oil capsules was another one. Peppermint fennel tea, something else. And at the time, they really almost didn't exist on the U.S. market, especially in a wide basis, unless you were lucky enough to have a Whole Foods right by you, or you could import peppermint caps from England. There really wasn't anything else out there. And the soluble fiber supplements that were things like Metamucil, not really soluble fiber. It's got insoluble fiber and all this other stuff in it. Citrusol was the only other one. Benefiber hadn't even quite come out yet. And I was trying to figure out a way to give people what they were asking for. I had people emailing me and calling me and saying, you're recommending this. Where do I find this? And I thought, well, I'll try to put together a little product line for people for IBS and source this for them, because I was struggling to find some of it myself. And trying to find a straight soluble fiber was probably the most interesting thing. I went through a whole bunch of raw materials suppliers. There's a lot of different kinds of soluble fiber out there, more than I knew. And the Acacia Senegal was what I landed on, because it fit the bill perfectly. It was a pure soluble fiber. I could get it certified organic, so no pesticides, no herbicides, no chemicals. It was minimally processed. There's nothing else in it. It's a prebiotic, so it ferments very slowly in the bowel, not rapidly like a FODMAP, and it creates an environment in the bowel that encourages the growth of healthy gut bacteria. So that's fabulous sort of side effect of it. It resolves diarrhea or constipation. It just depends on the dose. And aesthetically, it was so nice to use and to take. It didn't thicken up. It didn't taste like some weird synthetic orange tang from the 70s. It just disappeared into anything, into any liquid, into any moist food. You could cook with it. It had all of these, benefits and no downsides. And it even looked nice, just like a plain white powder. It didn't look like something weird. And it fit the bill for everything that people with IBS needed. And so I went with that. And yeah, people were really happy with it.
What is acacia though? ACACIA. So is it a root? What is it?
It's the gum. There's two different kinds of acacia trees that produce gum, Acacia senegal and Acacia sayal, and they're different grades, and I only ever use the Acacia senegal. So it comes literally from the Acacia senegal trees. They grow in specific regions of Africa only, and when it hits a certain temperature, the trees produce a gum, sort of looks like crystallized maple syrup on the outer bark of the tree. They're really beautiful. The raw balls of acacia are quite lovely. And it's been traditionally used by people for literally thousands of years. It's also called gum arabic. Some people know it by that name. And they harvest the acacia gums from the organic orchards, and they basically just dissolve it in water because it's soluble fiber, which means it will dissolve in water. And they filter out any twigs or bugs or anything like that and sterilize it. And they just spray it on big drums, and the water evaporates out, and you are left with this plain white powder. So it's literally the gum of the Acacia senegal tree, and it's just a pure soluble fiber. That's all that it is.
So before you discovered this, what were the people in Africa doing with this? I mean, what were other people using acacia gum fiber for?
Gosh, the strange thing is it is used in so many different applications for foods, for cosmetics. It's used in art. It's used as an emulsifier. It's been traded literally for centuries. It's used in the Middle Ages and illuminated manuscripts as a binder for the penguins. It's got all these crazy uses. But it's been used traditionally as a digestive aid for many centuries. If you start reading ingredients and things from drinks to ice creams to breads, you'll see acacia added. It emulsifies things. It can add body. Sometimes it's used to add fiber to commercial foods or beverages. It had just never been put on the market as a fiber supplement in and of itself. And I think there was really no demand. There were a couple fiber supplements out there. They've been out there for years. That's what people knew. And they just weren't really suitable for people with IBS, and no one cared because the folks with IBS were dismissed or ignored or just, nobody cared. Right. And I care. And so I really wanted to give the people with IBS something that they could use and that worked for them.
Wow.
And the acacia fit the bill.
So I've told all my doctors about you. Are there doctors that you've told about you that are actually on board with this, that are recommending your product to their patients and using it?
We hear from a surprising number of doctors, dietitians, registered nurses, kind of all across the map. Sometimes I hear from patients who were sent to us by their doctors. So I think word is getting out there. I think in general, dietary information, including soluble fiber, is becoming more broadly available to the doctors and becoming a more mainstream avenue of treatment. So yeah, the good GI docs and family docs and internists who are trying to help their IBS patients are going to be really likely to point them towards a soluble fiber supplement.
Well, how long have you been in business? I mean, I just heard about you, about a year and a half ago. So
we started 2001.
Wow.
And added on, the tummy fiber came in 2003.
Wow. So that's amazing. How does a person, maybe you can tell me this because I didn't know you back then, it would have been great. How do you find your dose? And and again, I'm thinking, well, how does something help both diarrhea and constipation? They're exact opposites.
I know. And there's a whole thing on the website about that because that comes up all the time. And it's true for soluble fiber in foods as well as in supplements. Soluble fiber is a regulator. So whether you have IBS or not, really doesn't matter. Soluble fiber regulates the motility of the bowel. And if you have IBS, that motility goes awry, and that's what leads to the symptoms. So soluble fiber stops the spasms and the cramps. It literally regulates the contractions of the bowel, and it regulates water content in the bowel as well. So it will take people from either extreme, diarrhea or constipation, and bring them to a middle point, and then keep them there. And that's where the dose comes into play. Because really, for a soluble fiber, a concentrated one like the acacia, where there's just nothing but soluble fiber, everybody starts with half a teaspoon twice a day. And ideally twice a day because it only works when it's in your gut. So you want to keep your gut filled with soluble fiber 24/7. You can have it 3 times a day or more, but at least twice a day works best for most people. So everybody starts half a teaspoon twice a day. And then you just gradually increase. You let your gut get used to more fiber. Most Americans have a low fiber diet. You don't want to suddenly drastically overwhelm your gut with fiber. So every 3 or 4 days, you'd add an extra half a teaspoon to your morning dose. And then you wait 3 or 4 days, you add an extra half a teaspoon to your evening dose. And you just slowly, gradually increase that dose. And in general, the diarrhea folks are on the lower end of the range, and they end up maybe 1 to 2 tablespoons a day total, maybe 3 tablespoons max. The constipation folks can end up all the way on 4 or 5 tablespoons a day. But if they resolve at a lower dose, they stay there. So you start low, you increase gradually, you keep gradually increasing. And when you feel that you are stable, no diarrhea, no constipation, that's the dose where you stay. And there's no magic number. It's not right or wrong. If you're on a low dose or a high dose, you just gradually get there. And when you feel good, that's where you stay.
Nice.
Yeah.
You know, when I think about it, Heather, before this IBS diagnosis happened to me, my whole life I was constipated, which made no sense because I'm vegan and I'm eating a ton of fiber. But I had IBS without it being acknowledged. So do you think I should increase my okay, so I've been taking a half a tablespoon in the morning. And I haven't done a night dose. Do you think I would benefit from not changing my morning dose but trying an evening dose? Because I'm still, I hate talking about this, but it'll help. I'm still a little on the soft side, but maybe soft is normal for me because it's not diarrhea. It's just, it's not, you know, I hate talking about poop, but
if you don't feel like 100% normal and comfortable and happy, and there's any kind of like,
well, I'm very happy because I'm not bloated and I don't have diarrhea, but it's just, you know, like that commercial, normal is what's normal for you. I mean, when I see how my dog, when she poops, it's like I can pick it up. You know, it's just different. But I mean, I feel great. But maybe I will try an evening dose just to see. I tend not to drink so much at night. But so how this is so great that you talked about prebiotic, because one of the questions I had from viewers is it prebiotic? So now we know it is. And so how is it different than the ones that you hear about from your doctor, the Citracel, the Benefiber, the Menomine? I mean, I know it's different because it tastes better and it's cheaper, and I can get it on Amazon delivered the same day. So for me, it's better in every way. But how is it different from some of these other ones, if people are asking about?
Those are all actually different types of fiber. So Metamucil is psyllium, which is about 1/3 insoluble fiber. And for people with IBS, insoluble fiber it's a GI stimulant. It can trigger problems. So you need insoluble fiber in the foods that you're eating, which is the roughage kind of fiber, leafy greens and kernels and seeds and all of that, skin. But for a day in, day out soluble fiber, you don't want that for IBS. You want just soluble fiber as the regulator. So I would not use psyllium. If you tolerate it, great, but it's not my first choice. You don't want anything in there but soluble fiber. You do not want citric acid or artificial sweeteners or sugar, orange flavor. None of that's going to help IBS.
Right.
It might hurt. So take it out of the equation. Just soluble fiber. Citracel is actually a synthetic soluble fiber, which I personally don't want. I don't want to be eating something synthetic day in and day out. I would much rather have a natural plant fiber and ideally organic. Benefiber keeps changing their ingredients. I think they're wheat dextrin at this point. I don't know if that is prebiotic or not. Not all soluble fibers are, but ideally you want one that is pure soluble fiber and a prebiotic, because encouraging the growth of the healthy bacteria in your gut is a huge deal for IBS. And it's becoming a bigger deal every day as they get more and more info on the gut biome and how your gut bacteria affects everything from autism to arthritis to diabetes to joint issues to all kinds of digestive issues. It's a really big deal. I mean, there's a huge push in the medical world to get into the gut biome and study this, and I think its effect directly on your gut and things like IBS are going to be the tip of the iceberg. So anything that you can do to get your gut bacteria to thrive and to, the more you have healthy gut bacteria, the more it's going to keep the bad bacteria in check. We use a lot of antibiotics in this country. There's a lot of things that disrupt people's natural gut bacteria. Anything prebiotic is going to help counter that. Keep you stable. So yeah, that's a huge benefit, particularly for the bloating and gas. The prebiotic effect is really what helps people with bloating and gas. The soluble fiber was really the diarrhea and constipation, and it'll stop the spasms by regulating motility. But that prebiotic sort of side effect used to be kind of a fringe benefit, and now I think it's leaning towards that. That's going to be as important as the soluble fiber itself.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Bloating seems to be an epidemic with people I know, especially women,
I think it's the hardest symptom for people to get on top of. It seems to be the hardest symptom to address. It's certainly one of the most frustrating and upsetting of the symptoms. And yeah, that's a tough one. That's one where I think the FODMAPs can be particularly helpful, not for everybody, but if people have made other dietary changes and aren't seeing improvements, I can point them towards the FODMAPs for the bloating and the gas. Things like fennel tea can help quickly, or peppermint tea. And the bloating especially seems to go hand in hand with constipation, whereas the diarrhea folks seem to be more prone to the extreme pain.
Wow.
It's not quite, but just in general, it seems to be diarrhea, spasms, pain. And
interesting. Well, so then I was a unique case because I had bloating and diarrhea. That was.
Yeah, and you can have all of it.
Right.
Just anecdotally, it seems to be the
the thing is like if you have diarrhea and constipation, unless you tell people, they don't know. But when you have bloating, especially if you're petite, when you're on the smaller side and you bloat, it was just, I remember like I'd go to the doctor and they go, "Oh, when are you due?" And I'm like, "I'm 54. I'm not due. I'm bloated." Yeah.
I know. And you know, people, their clothes literally don't fit.
Oh, no, that was the other thing. I'm a professional speaker, and I had to buy these things called Spanx because if I would bloat, I mean, literally, I couldn't fit into my clothes, and Spanx are not comfortable. I don't recommend them, but it was really, really hard. So behind you, I see a lovely display. I recognize my product there, but then I'm seeing some things that I don't recognize, like a purple can and a green can. So maybe you could talk about your different products and who do you think they might benefit?
Sure. Well, the orange, the tummy fiber, that's definitely, you want the soluble fiber for diarrhea, constipation, or alternating. That's what really should completely resolve that and manage it on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. Like you say, it is a great regulator. And I know from the few days that I traveled without it, and the minute I didn't have it, I know it's not psychological because I traveled without it. And the 3 days that I was gone, I had diarrhea every single day.
And
so
it's not psychological because your gut is responding to the soluble fiber in it.
Right.
So yes, it's in your gut. It's not in your mind. The purple can that you see is a high volatile oil peppermint tea. So people who get the pain, the spasms, and the cramps. Peppermint is a smooth muscle relaxant and a painkiller. And teas work very fast, which is great and important for the people like me on the extreme end, where we just can go from 0 to 60 with pain in 10 seconds, and we're suddenly unconscious. So the peppermint tea is fabulous for stopping pain, stopping spasms as quickly as possible. The green can is fennel tea. Fennel is a carminative, so it helps your body reduce and expel bloating and gas. And again, it works very quickly, so the people who need immediate help with the bloating, they'd want to go to the fennel tea, or people who can't tolerate peppermint because of heartburn issues can go to the fennel.
Nice.
Yeah. And then there's a little peppermint bottle, a tiny purple bottle. Those are enteric-coated peppermint and fennel oil capsules. Those have been around forever, although you used to have to get them from England. Now you don't. We have them in America. And those are fabulous for heading off pain, spasms, cramps, bloating, and gas. They're preventative, so it's concentrated oils. They're going to be stronger than the teas, but you have to take them on an empty stomach, and you use them in advance of symptoms. So mornings are rough. You take one last thing a night before you go to bed. I carry them with me. I take them before restaurant meals religiously because I do not trust restaurants.
I don't trust restaurants either. I do, my New Year's resolution last year was to never eat at a restaurant, and I only did it one time. This year, I'm not going to eat at a restaurant at all. No, they're horrible for people with special dietary needs. They just, because they don't care. I mean, I don't want to say they don't care, but the server doesn't know that the pan was treated with this, or it's really hard to get a compliant meal at a restaurant if you're diligent.
Questions. You got to make special requests and be a little bit of a difficult customer. Be nice, tip well. But
right. It's hard.
First.
Now, your capsules, somebody asked me to ask you if they're vegan, and if they're not, would you ever be able to come up with one that is vegan?
I would love to be able to come up with one that is vegan. It's the only thing in the entire line that's not certified organic, vegan, or kosher. And the reason for that is no one has yet invented a vegan gelatin that can withstand an oil filling, and particularly peppermint oil filling. And whenever they have tried, the capsules will crack, they will leak. Basically, the oil just eats through the gel. And eventually, the oil will eat through even the animal gelatin. If you let them sit for a couple of years, the oil will start coming through, and especially the peppermint oil. What
about making it in a dropper for vegans that they could just take it?
You don't want concentrated peppermint oil in your stomach. It will lax your upper GI, not just your lower GI, and it will cause heartburn.
Okay.
Yeah, so it has to be the gelatin to withstand the oil, and also the enteric coating they put on it is a little tough on the gelatin as well, and that tends to break down vegan gelatin.
I see.
And you need the enteric coating because that's what resists the stomach acid, so it basically is meant to pass through your stomach intact and not dissolve until it reaches your small intestines. Wow. So you get the benefit in your lower GI without the upper GI heartburn.
I think you should go to medical school because you know so much already. You already have the passion. You'd just be so great,
Well, thanks.
You're not interested.
Good.
because you have such a, I love any story of recovery, and I love especially ones about people that healed themselves like you did. I didn't, I'll be honest, I've never been on your website because I heard about the product from a friend. I bought it at a health food store and I continue to buy it on Amazon. I didn't know about these other products. What do fennel teas and peppermint teas taste like? Do they taste good or?
I like both of them. Peppermint tea tastes like peppermint. Most people know what peppermint tea tastes like. Ours it's super large leaf and it's really high volatile oil because the volatile oils are what make it effective for IBS. So it's not really meant to be just have a nice cup of tea. It's meant to be super duper strong to knock out symptoms. So it tastes like very strong peppermint.
I see.
And you can brew it weaker if you wish. The stronger it is, the more effective it will be. But if you add more water, brew it for less time, it won't be as minty. Fennel tastes like a sort of sweet black licorice.
Oh, it sounds good.
I know people either love it, but other people hate it.
Right.
Licorice is a dividing flavor. So people either drink it and sort of chug it like medicine because it works, or they brew it with something else like the peppermint or another herbal tea, so it masks the flavor.
I see.
I'm with you. I like black licorice, so I like.
Yeah, and I always like the taste of the food fennel, so I think I would probably like it. And
if you like that, you would like the tea.
It looks like there's maybe two books or a book and a DVD behind you as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a couple books. Eating for IBS is the book that started it, the dietary book, and the cookbook, and it covers soluble versus insoluble fiber, the common GI triggers, the high fat, the irritants like coffee, soda pop, alcohol, and all that, and then how to work around that so that if you take out triggers from your diet, you're not feeling like you have nothing left to eat and life sucks. So I love food. I've always had a passion for food, for cooking, for all kinds of ethnic markets and cookbooks, and that really, I think, was instrumental in helping me overcome IBS. So I had a wealth of recipes long before I even wrote the book that had been adapted just for me.
Yeah, I wish I had read your book. I almost always interview people after reading their book, but I mean, this was sort of backwards, and I apologize, but I will read it now. But have you found, though, that there seems to be certain foods that, of course, everybody is going to be a unique individual. Some people can have this, and some people won't be able to have this. But have you found that there's certain foods that are sort of universal that those of us with IBS seem to not be able to tolerate as well?
I think categories of food is a better way to put it, and then finding your specific tolerances within that. Fats are a huge GI stimulant, whether you have IBS or not. That's what they do. They make your gut go faster.
That's so funny. I eat no fat. I have not eaten, I mean, I don't want to say no fat because there's fat in everything. There's fat in greens, even trace amounts in fruit. Yeah. There's oats are like 20% fat, but I have not added any fat to my diet in the last 5 years. And I think that's been a huge help with this.
It's a hard one for people. Anything high fat is a likely trigger. Red meat and dairy products are pretty much universal triggers. Even if lactose-free dairy, it just doesn't matter. The fat, the casein, the whey, and the lactose, the fat and the proteins, the fat in red meats are really hard on people. Coffee is a GI irritant, even decaf. That can be a universal.
Wow.
Artificial sweeteners are GI irritants. That's pretty universal.
Thank you for saying that because, my world is now weight loss and food addiction done in a healthy vegan manner without having to weigh and measure your food. And one of the things I see is people, whether they're overweight or not, most people know that sugar is not a health food. And so they go to these artificial sugars like the stevia, like the xylitol, like the erythritol. And every GI doctor I've interviewed say they're horrible for our gut, they're horrible for our microbiome, that they're worse for you than sugar. And for food addiction and weight loss, they're worse. So thank you for saying that they're horrible for IBS.
Yeah, and I say it to people the exact same way. Sugar, it's not a health food. You certainly don't have to eat it. But if you want something sweet in terms of your gut, you're going to be far better off with a small portion of real sugar than using some kind of artificial sweetener.
That's
so
right.
Either avoid it or have something that's a sweet and just have a little bit and treat yourself.
Yeah.
And you can actually make a lot of really IBS-friendly, safe desserts. It doesn't mean it's a health food, but at least you can have a little splurge once in a while and it's not going to make you sick.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty universal one. Most people have to go low fat, not necessarily fat free.
Right.
Focus on your heart healthy fats, your olive oil, your coconut oil, and your nut oils and all that. But watch your quantity because the amount, too much of any kind of fat is going to set off your gut.
Yep.
And then insoluble fiber is the other one. These are your healthiest foods. Most of your fruits and your veggies and your whole grains, all your roughage is your insoluble fiber. Again, it's a GI stimulant, whether you have IBS or not. So if you do have IBS, it's likely to set off spasms and cramps and symptoms. So So you can't just take those foods out of your diet, but you can do things like take the peel and the skin off of your fruits and veggies. Cooking mechanically breaks down insoluble fiber. Chopping things up, throw it in a blender, make a fresh fruit smoothie instead of a big raw fresh fruit salad. A raw green salad is probably going to be hard on people, but if you can cook those veggies, that's going to break down the insoluble fiber before you eat it. Probably be a lot more tolerable.
Right. I do find, people with GI issues do better with the steamed vegetables than the raw ones.
They do. And you can literally see the difference, like raw spinach versus cooked spinach. They look completely different. It's the same food, but you've broken down that insoluble fiber. It's so much easier on your gut.
It is, yeah.
And then soluble fiber, that's your friend. Soluble fiber is in foods and supplements. That's what's going to keep your bowel calm, keep it regulated, stop the symptoms in the first place. And that's the kind of fiber people don't normally recognize as fiber. It's found in things they think of as starches, like rice and potatoes and oatmeal and bananas and all the sort of starchy, smushy foods. That's actually soluble fiber foods. You need those.
And those are my favorite foods. So yeah, it works good.
You need them. Use them as your foundation. Make your rice, make your pasta, make your oatmeal, make your quinoa is another one.
Yeah.
Tapioca, cooked sweet potatoes or regular potatoes or carrots or beets. Use those as your foundation. They're going to keep your gut calm.
Right.
Add in your insoluble fiber foods with them. And it's a way that you can have a healthy and really delicious foods without getting sick. So
Right.
it's not just what you eat, it's how you eat. And then, like you said, find your individual tolerance within those foods.
Right. I would imagine that alcohol is not great for this disease. I'm not a fan of it anyway, but I love when I get more ammunition as to why it's bad.
It's a GI irritant, and across the board, it's GI irritant. So a lot of people are going to struggle with alcohol. It doesn't mean they can never drink anything ever again. It's going to be like your fats. It's going to be quantity. Is it on an empty stomach? How are you feeling? Are you just stressed out? You had a horrible day? Don't sit down and have a triple, martini on an empty stomach. That is not a good idea. But if you're stable, you've been feeling well, you're in a good place, you just had a high soluble fiber meal, you could probably get away with a glass of white wine. Find your tolerance and make sure that you're not choosing alcohol that's got other triggers in it, like a pina colada with high-fat coconut milk or something that's carbonated, like beer, champagne, or if it's got maybe a high fructose fruit drink added to it that, don't put apple juice or grape juice in there. So watch everything else that's added. Don't have a coffee drink.
It's interesting. I don't know, since we're both Aries, maybe you're like this where we're kind of all or none, but I remember I went to a conference last fall in Orange County called the Plantrition Conference, and Robin Chutkin spoke, the lady that wrote Gut Bliss, and she was saying that when a GI patient gets better, they will be compliant because we are so happy when we don't have symptoms. So for me, eating this way is easy. I don't care what other people think of my limitations. I love my food because I know what it's like to be sick and to be sick for so long. It is not a hardship for me. It is a joy that I know what I can eat. And I'm wondering if you feel the same way, because I don't feel the need to experiment or go back to these foods that made me fat and sick.
Yes, I would completely agree. And there's a really good guideline that says healthiness tastes better. And I think that's right. It's more delicious to be healthy than to be sick. And, once you figure out what you need to eat and what you can't eat, it's a huge incentive. And you can certainly have good food and avoid your triggers. And, you will be compliant if you realize that something is going to put you in an absolute state of misery.
Right.
And people who are hesitant, people who don't want to give up that, nightly drink or whatever it is, the burger that's setting them off, I tell them take 2 weeks. Just take 2 weeks and take it out of your diet. Put it on the calendar, and hey, at the end of the 2 weeks, you can go back and eat as much of this as you want. But just give it a shot. See if you don't feel better.
Yeah.
I always hear back from those people, yeah, that was right.
I know.
I feel better, and now it's not really appealing anymore. I am not craving that steak that I know is going to put me in the bathroom and knock me out with pain and misery.
Wow, great. That's that. I do the same thing. I just say 3 weeks. Boy, we are two peas in a pod. So Heather, how would you suggest somebody get started if they have symptoms of IBS, if they haven't been diagnosed yet? Do you think they should go see their GI doctor? Do you think they should just buy some of the tummy fiber and treat themselves and find their dose? What do you, or go to your website, look for information? What do you suggest?
You can't self-diagnose. That's the thing. You can self-manage IBS. The risk is that you're going to self-diagnose with IBS and you really have something else going on. You really have colon cancer, you have Crohn's, you have celiac. There's all these things that can mimic IBS that you just can't rule out on your own. At a bare minimum, you need to see a doctor for some blood work. You might not need a colonoscopy, you might not need anything invasive, but they can't rule out things like celiac and inflammatory bowel disease by just looking at you and talking to you. They can't. So you need those things ruled out. If they're ruled out, if your symptoms fit the wrong criteria, if there's nothing else going on that's a red flag symptom, you don't have a suspicious family history, if you're not over age 40 at the onset, odds are pretty good that you're fitting the wrong criteria. An IBS diagnosis is valid. There's no harm in treating yourself like you have IBS before a diagnosis. None of the dietary changes, taking the tummy fiber, drinking peppermint tea, it's not going to hurt you if you don't have IBS, so there's no harm in it. It's probably going to make you feel better.
And it probably won't hurt you even if you have one of these more serious diseases.
It won't. It won't hurt you if you do have Crohn's or celiac to have the tummy fiber. It's not going to do any harm. It might make you feel a little better. The risk is that you need to know if you have a serious disease like that. They can progress into non-GI issues. They could literally kill you. So you need to find out if you have something like that going on in the background. Get that ruled out, preferably by a GI doc. And then if it is IBS, okay, now you know. Now you don't have anything else to worry about. Now you can get down to managing on a day-to-day basis and focus on feeling better. Yes.
Yeah. Do you have any experience with SIBO or SIBO, SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth?
A little bit. We hear from a number of people with that. It seems to come back for a lot of people. They go through multiple rounds of the antibiotic.
Yeah.
A lot of them get sent our way for the tummy fiber because of the prebiotic benefit.
Yeah, it does help because, it absolutely helps.
It does help. I mean, if you're lucky, it'll turn out that you just have SIBO and not IBS. And if they get rid of the bacterial overgrowth, you're kind of cured.
Right.
But a lot of people seem to have both.
Right.
So even if you get rid of the SIBO, they still have the IBS.
Sure,
Yeah.
right.
But in general, I think the same things that help one help the other.
Right. Well, as difficult as it's been for us to connect, you were certainly worth the wait. You are just so passionate, inspiring, intelligent, articulate. I thank you so much for creating something that has helped me manage my IBS inexpensively, deliciously. Actually, it doesn't taste like anything, so it's great. And so what is your website if people do want to get in touch with you or learn more about your products?
Your website, which is huge. It's helpforibs.com.
Great.
HELPFORIBS.com.
Excellent.
And it's enormous. There's a research library, there's diagnostic information, there's a huge diet section, there's all the product information, and you can order online or it'll send you to local stores. They can contact us through that. We answer email all day long. There's message boards where people can communicate back and forth. Any videos like this and interviews get posted up there. So people can
nice.
It's a huge, huge resource.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you for your work. And I'm sorry that you had to suffer as a 9-year-old, but look, your suffering is helping so many people now. So that's, you found meaning in your suffering, which I think is just wonderfully inspiring.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Heather. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Healthy Living. I'm Chef AJ, and I make healthy taste delicious.